All right, welcome to the week 3 update. Thanks for tuning in once again. Like I said, week 3, we're right around the quarter point of the season, so teams are starting to kind of get a feel for what they got. Still early though. Still nobody's pulled away or fallen too far behind. Obviously, I was actually just looking at the standings, and we've got 2 3-0 teams, a 2-1 team, and everybody else is 1-2. So it's pretty wide open. Nobody's really running away with the scoring. So still early, but like I said, everybody's by now starting to get a feel for what they got and maybe what they need to work on and improve. So I thought for the whip around this week, I would go in to the draft, and we'll just go down the list and kind of go through what each team did right, and then maybe next week we'll go into what they did wrong. But without further ado, we'll get right into that, and we'll start. And again, we'll do it in order of the points race leaders, and we got Pat with the Hemp Hogs at 446, and Pat, the number 1 pick, went receiver heavy, and it's paid off so far. Olave's been steady, and then Chase and Smith have had their kind of explosive weeks, and if they all 3 get it together, that'll be hard to beat. And then the other little note on Pat's draft is that little flyer on Mostert in the 10th. Obviously, this week really paid off, but the 3-headed monster at wide receiver is I think where is obviously the strength of Pat's team, and that's what his plan from the draft, as you can see. All right, and then we'll go over to the Pierces in at 425, or other 3-0 team. And every year it seems he gets older and older, and Keenan Allen falls farther and farther down the draft list of can't miss wide receivers, but somebody ends up taking them, and you either get an injured Keenan Allen or you get what you've got so far this year, which is, the number 1 wide receiver so far. And I certainly just didn't disappoint this week. And then you also got, I thought, a guy I really considered with one of my first 2 picks was Tony Pollard. He's kind of been a steady rock kind of in the lineup each of the first 3 weeks, and him combined with Allen, and then kind of you got your two main contributors there, and it's been worked out good so far, off to a 3-0 start. And then one of the guys I kind of gave a lower grade to at the draft was RB and the Rasta Dogs, but they check in at 2-1 after 3 weeks and with 416 points. And I think the big thing about their draft is value with Deebo Samuel in the 4th round. Looks like he's kind of gotten back to his form. Like, whatever happened to him last year, I don't know. But looks like so far this year, and after last year's performance, he kind of slipped in the draft. He was a 2nd rounder last year. RB picks him up in the 4th, and he looks like he's back to form, and kind of got another real good value in the 6th as James Conner. I know a lot of teams right now that are begging for running backs that wish they would have grabbed Conner a little earlier, for him to fall to the 6th round and do what he's done so far. And those 2 have, RB right up there and right in contention. Then we'll head over to Houday 23 and Kevin in at 391. I think the 2 things that stand out to me in that draft so far are DeAndre Swift. Looks like he's kind of taken that Philadelphia running back job by the horn so far. And then also another good value at running back is Brian Robinson, all the way down in the 12th round. He didn't have a great, if my memory, I don't know, but he didn't have a great week this week. But he's been good so far. And those two, almost, ninth and 12th round for two running backs that almost anybody would be starting. Got some really good value there, and it's paying off so far. And we'll jump over to Kevin Capel picking in the third spot. Obviously, Jefferson was the big thing, falling to the third pick. I think almost every draft I saw didn't have him getting past the second pick. So, and he has lived up to. It seems like if it wasn't possible, but he's better than he's been his first 3 years so far. I think I saw the other day he's on pace for 2,600 receiving yards this year. But him falling to the third pick, that's your anchor for your team. And then the other pick I really like for Kevin was that Sam Laporta. I mentioned that last week, but rookie tight ends are hit or miss, but it seems like Laporta has really caught on there in Detroit. And when you can find a tight end like that's going to be consistent week in and week out scorer, that can make a big difference when everybody is scrambling for tight end consistency every week. And then we move over to the Kathy, who picked right before Kevin. She's in with 300, just a point behind. I think her big steal of the draft, not steal, but ETN fallen. After his performance last year, definitely worthy of a second round pick this year, but falling into the third, I think people kind of got scared off by Tank Bigsby. And but so far, ETN's been a solid contributor. And then, of course, Tua with the big week, two out of three really big weeks. And I think as long as he stays healthy, you've easily got a top 5 quarterback this year, as Miami's offense looks, pretty high powered. So again, two good building blocks that kind of maybe fell a little bit lower than everybody expected, but that's what you need for a successful draft. We'll jump over to John in at 380. Seems like has a solid weeks. Run in twice to play the top point scorer in the league, but those things tend to balance out over the year. I think the big thing that stands out with John, you got the steal of his draft. I would say is Mike Evans down in round 9. He was on my radar for sure, but those receivers get older, and you get scared to pull the trigger. But John picks him up in round 9, pairing him with Amon-Ra and DJ Metcalf. I think you've got 3 solid receivers there, and it really no reason to think that Evans is going to slow down. I mean, he's had 1,000. I think he's like the only receiver that's had 1,000 yards the first however many years of his career, and certainly off to a great start this year. And Amon-Ra hasn't missed a beat, and Metcalf's right there too. So 3 receivers, especially in this league, point per reception, that's going to keep you in most weeks, and so far it has. And we'll go over to Tony. I think the big thing about Tony's draft, pulling the trigger on Josh Allen. Somebody was going to do it. He was the second QB off the board, and I think that's right. Second QB off the board, and in the third round, which a lot of mocks saw him going, late second, early third. So getting him late in the third, and I think, obviously a slow start the first week, but it's been solid the next 2 weeks. And then right after that, picking up Kenneth Walker, again, kind of like ETN. I think people were kind of scared off in the draft when Seattle took Charbonnet, thinking maybe he'd cut into Walker's time. But as I found out the hard way this week, that's not the case. Walker with a big 30-point week to push Tony over the top, and really, again, provide that kind of you know, uh, base running, the star running back that every team needs to kind of build their team around. But then we'll jump over to Kyle. Kyle took a beating on draft night a little, but it wasn't all bad. Obviously, uh, some injuries have cropped up, but pulling the trigger on Hawkinson. Um, Again, another guy that had a good year last year, but the career's been kind of up and down, so nobody was really. I don't think anybody was putting him in that the top. Obviously, not up with Kelsey and Andrews, but so far he has been the most consistent, I think, tight end in fantasy this year. So getting him in the 6th round again, those onesie positions. Um, if you can get a guy that's head and shoulders above the rest, it makes a difference and puts you in the game each week. And then also Mixon in the 3rd, which is about where everybody had him. But to me, um, I think Mixon seems like he's running way harder than he did last year. I think time will tell, but it seems like he might be primed for a good year this year. So that could end up being a 3rd round steal. I mean, Mixon's been a top 10 back, um, several times in his career. Maybe he has one more year of magic left, uh, but that remains to be seen. And then bringing up the rear, yours truly um, hasn't gone the way I started. I hoped, especially with the injury, but I think the big thing I'll take away from the draft is that after going running back to not, I didn't. The inclination was to take a receiver, and I'm glad I didn't. Taking Hurts and Gibbs uh, might save the season with Chubb going down. You got Hurts off to a little bit of a slower start, but he provides pretty much a solid floor of 20 points at quarterback, and then Gibbs. Hopefully, Detroit finds a way to get him going, and that kind of takes away the sting of the loss of Chubb there. So I guess that's what I would take away from that draft is that just didn't and now we'll find out. I'll talk a little bit next week about how receivers went, but like I said, the inclination was to take the receiver after going running back, and I'm kind of glad I didn't right now. So that'll do it for the whip around, and then we'll jump over to game of the week. Well, for the game of the week, I know you guys all like to hear me talking about my fantasy team, so I've gone ahead and selected the Ingrown Hares versus the Rasta Dogs for week 4. Mainly, of all the week 4 matchups, this one is projected to be the closest, and it's between RB off to the 2-1 start, and then the Ingrown Hares off to a little bit, 1-2, kind of a shaky start. Can't really afford to fall any farther behind, and obviously would love to see both teams at 2-2 versus RB at 3-1, and looking up, and then the Ingrown Hares looking up from the basement. So a big game from that respect. A pretty good matchup. Quarterbacks, obviously Mahomes has the edge in every quarterback matchup, but a little bit of a tougher matchup against the Jets. While we hope Hurts can kind of get things together. It's been solid, but hasn't had that big breakout game yet. And then, speaking of breakout games, I'd love to see these 2 rookies kind of put it together here. They've shown some signs, but haven't quite put it together. And then going up against, obviously, James Conner, and who's been, as I talked about in the whip around, Conner's been everything you could hope for out of a starting running back. And then, got Pacheco, Breece Hall, again, two running backs capable of big weeks, but really haven't quite put one together yet. So we'll see on that. And then RB with a nice wide receiver tandem there of Tyreek and Debo. And that's pretty hard to handle for any team, and especially one that's still waiting for Puka Nacua breakout, and for Cooper Kupp to come off the injury list. So definitely got to give RB the nod there at wide receiver. Hopefully Ayuk can get back to health this year, and Jordan Addison's been a nice little surprise. I think he's been in double digits every week. or at least close to it. So, you know, gotta hope he can keep that up. And then Jerome Ford, when we go down into our obviously you'll give Kittle the nod over. Kincaid hasn't quite put it together yet. Encouraged by his playing time and his targets, but just hasn't really put a big stat game together. I'm hoping to see that come too. Again, and we talked about it, or well, everybody made fun of me on draft night about having a lot of rookies. Hopefully, as the season gets in more, we get more into the season here, these rookies start putting it together and things start coming around. But and then in the flex positions, again, the lineup's not set here, but you know, just wanted to give that shout out to Jerome Ford. I was really considering benching him against Tennessee. It came up with 2 big touchdowns, and hopefully he can keep that going. And then for RB, you hate to see it, but George Pickens is, he's an electric player, and he could make differences on your fantasy roster. I can see why you wouldn't mind having him there, and definitely a plus matchup against Houston there. So that's kind of the matchup for the week, and that's all I got. Good luck, everybody.